Hey everyone, Max Bowen from Citywide Blackout here. Well, it's that time of the year again. In just a few months, the annual Rhode Island Author Expo returns. This event brings together more than 100 authors from all genres. Now, this year will be a lot different, because like so many other events, they decided to cancel the physical one in the interest of public safety. But that doesn't mean the show doesn't happen. In fact, this year it's going all virtual, with panels, author coffee couches, and a whole lot more. And once more, I'll be the MC of this wonderful event. Now, the whole thing happens on December 5th, and you should definitely check out riauthorexpo.com for more information and a complete list of events. I'll see you there. Welcome back to Citywide Blackout, your home for music, movies, and more. I'm your host, Max Bowen. In this episode, I'm talking with Sharisse Zeroonian, Stephanie Wang, and Evan Gabovitch, the creators and cast of the new YouTube series, The Sandbox Police. This show is a comedy about a podcast and was supposed to take place in a fictional college radio station. But when the pandemic happened, they had to change directions and instead filmed all the episodes entirely on Zoom, determined to make this show happen. We talk about the story behind the show, the role that each character fills, and what we can expect in future episodes. We are talking to the creators of the new YouTube series, The Sandbox Police, Sharisse Zeroonian, Stephanie Wang, and Evan Gabovitch. Welcome, all of you. Welcome to the show. I am loving this show, so I am definitely want to dive right into this thing.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for having us.
So, to kick this off, I want to know where the idea for this came from, because I understand that you had a plan A, and then all this stuff happened, and you had to go to plan B.
Right. So that all started with me. So the show Sandbox Police, I'd written it to be filmed in an actual radio station, because for those who are watching and haven't seen it, it's about, well, the original premise had been about a bunch of kids in a college radio station, the hijinks they get into on their show. And I was like, okay, maybe, and it was just something I wrote. I didn't know when I was going to really film it. I was like, okay, I was like, when did I write it? A few years ago. It's like, okay, maybe I'll have access to a college radio station. Maybe I won't after I graduate. Who knows? And Corona happened, and I thought, okay, my other TV projects were put on hold, like my show, 1+1 is 2, which I think I talked a little bit about. I did talk a little bit about to Max in a previous episode that I was on by myself. That got put on hold, and I thought, okay, I got to be doing something. And I thought, why don't I take Sandbox Police and adapt it? Which, for current times, and now it doesn't take place in the year 2020, but the premise of it changed a little bit. Instead of 3 kids being in the college radio station as it's happening, it's the 3 kids have graduated, and they're now continuing their show over Zoom. Like for YouTube, there is now a video podcast and not just a college radio station anymore. And now it's like a YouTube show. And I thought that's a great idea. So I got these guys together and I said, hey, do you want to be my actors and stuff? Because for a while I was saying like, oh, I'll just do what I do for my other projects. I'll cast people and things like that. And we had, for other episodes, we're going to have other actors come in and stuff, like via Zoom, of course. But I figured because these 2 are my friends, we've been friends for a long time, when we've already had, that chemistry, we thought it would just work out, and it has. So,
is this your first time working together?
On something like this, well, Evan and actually not for Evan and I. We worked together on another project, my film Wellwater. We worked on that. He and my boyfriend were part of the long-suffering crew for that. That was a crazy thing. I think I told you about that in the last episode, how I put a hole in someone's wall by accident when I was filming. Oh my God,
you told that.
Yeah, it was, but Stephanie and I have never worked together in this sense. So, but now it's great that we're all together.
Yeah, so Evan and I and Sharisse and I, we've been friends for the longest time, and I've worked with Evan and Sharisse as an editor on their freelance writing projects, and I do some freelance editing on the side. So naturally we have the chemistry there, and I've even looked over scripts for Sharisse and for Evan, but we've actually never actually filmed something together at the same time. So it's been super exciting just being able to see how our friendship translates to the screen and being able to have this new creative outlet. And I think it's going really well so far. It's fun.
And then as for me, like Sharisse said, we've worked together on short film things. I've helped her with collaboration just in terms of thinking about ideas for the Sandbox Police and Well Water and for all of these things. Obviously, the hole in the wall incident happened. That was really embarrassing, and we were like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And then we told the person, and she said, "No, don't worry about it. It's totally fine." We were like, "Wait, what?" We were willing to actually pay out of our pocket for any damages, but she said, "No, like, don't worry about it." So we definitely dodged a bullet, although in this case it was a hole in the wall. But
yeah.
Anyway, so but just in terms of, I've done acting very unofficially here and there, but it's been a long time since I did any official like web shows or any official acting like that. And I always wanted to sort of get myself out there for like a YouTube channel or just collaborating with all my creative friends and things. And then once the pandemic hit and once the Sandbox Police was sort of realizing itself as a Zoom web series, it just sort of made a lot of sense considering all the past collaborations and all the things with our writing, and everything just sort of came together very beautifully. And as a result, and especially because, like what was said earlier with our already existing chemistry, it just all worked out. So it's been great. Scheduling has been kind of tricky, but everything has been going very smoothly otherwise.
Given the humor in this show, and for the folks who are curious about this one, the humor is very intense, but very good. Are you like this in real life with each other?
We're not as mean to each other. I mean, we do bust each other's balls quite a lot, but I mean, it's more. I feel like the thing about Sandbox Police's humor specifically is what makes it unique is that it makes fun of both sides of the spectrum. It makes fun of the first end, which is just ultra PC, humorless, and like everything's offensive. And then the other side, which is just people who are just as rude and crude as they can be with no real intellect behind it. And the show makes fun of both. And so I'd say, yeah, we definitely we crap on each other a lot, like jokingly. Like they have so much all the family stuff, that we make jokes about with each other, and like, all the embarrassing incidents that we know about each other's childhoods and stuff. We throw that around, but there's some parts where the characters are just plain mean, and we're not like Flynn. That's the character I play, and I want to make her different from me. I didn't want to be the person who like puts herself in the show. There's nothing wrong with that. I just feel like it's been done a lot. I think I just want to see what it'd be like to be separate from the character. I hope I'm not that mean in real life. I don't just beat up on my friends like for nothing.
No, you're not.
Yeah,
no,
I'm good.
You're
so
not like
Flynn.
Flynn.
For me. I pay them to say that. But
yeah.
I didn't. No, but yeah, it's so there's some episodes where it's going to lead to we're not quite at the climax yet of the series, and that's going to be where there's a big blowout between the kids and how some of them like the culture of the show and some of them don't like the culture of the show, even though they participate in it all the time. I'd say the humor in the show, I think it serves to get us somewhere. Like, it's not, some people might look at it and think it's just us gratuitously like being mean and stuff, but no, it's there because each episode serves a purpose to get us the next episode, to like build a dynamic that once, an episode like with a big fight happens, like you'll understand why it happened.
And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, honestly, I feel like we hold a lot back on the show than we would in real life, to be honest with you. And that's purposeful. I think that's actually purposeful, because if you had a whole bunch of rambling, you wouldn't have as much of a coherent story as you would if you just sort of let anything fly, like on Twitch streams or radio shows or podcasts or anything like that. So I actually think it works both to our benefit, but also at the same time just trying to find creative ways of how our characters will develop and grow, and then just figuring out what does the story call for instead of just figuring out what each joke is. It's actually more story and character driven than some other shows are.
Yeah, so Sharisse made this really interesting point about this show's culture and how it makes fun of both sides and how some of the characters' jokes have a lot of hostility behind them, which eventually leads to a huge blowout. So it got me thinking about the show's culture versus the culture of our group chats and the culture that we've created between the three of us, the dynamic we have with our friendship. And I'd say that what really sets our humor apart just in real life as friends is the culture that we've created. Like, we bust each other's balls over our families all the time. We bust each other's balls over things that we say or things that we post, but I've never found it to be in hostility. And on top of that, like, we'll draw out a joke for as long as possible.
Oh my God.
For years at a time.
Really?
But what we have to do with this show is every joke, even if it doesn't seem measured, even if it seems random on Sandbox Police, it's timed in a certain area for a very specific purpose, whether it's character development or whether it's to be a part of the build-up to this larger conflict. And to provide a little context, what I've noticed, what I find interesting about the show is that there is a lot of drama on it, but the climax of it comes very slowly. Like, it doesn't come until the end of the series. But each of these jokes, like, they'll come in one episode, maybe, like, there'll be a mention in another episode.
Yeah.
But they're timed, so the show's very snappy, the scripts are short, but we eventually do get to this larger idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like this was entirely an improv show, and it was all just like off the cuff, or it was scripted, because like either way, it was really, really well done.
Oh, thank you. It partially improvised. Actually, it's like how. Well, at first I wanted to be like a Curb Your Enthusiasm type thing where Larry David, like, he doesn't have a script. He just tells his actors, okay, this is what's going to happen. And he just has them, he just gives them an outline. Like, first this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And he has them, like, just improv their lines, like, knowing, the actors know what they're supposed to be doing, but, like, there's no real lines been set for them. So the show is famous for that because it's all improv. We tried that, but it was just, like, it was kind of a mess, I think, because, like, we started talking as Evan, Stephanie, and Sharisse, and not, like, Charlie, Ellie, and Flynn, and it just degenerated into, like, our jokes. I'm like, guys, this is not
God. An episode would take a whole year to complete at that rate. Like, an episode would be a whole year long. Like, you wouldn't be able to do anything besides sit there and just watch Spaceballs.
Yeah.
So
first it was like, at first it was very difficult, especially because of just trying to get into our characters and figure out not just who they are as characters, but just figure out like how to actually do the show, to actually film the show. So that was, I think, a certain level of difficulty that we had to try to really, really figure out. But I think as we went along, it was just like, you know what, just follow the scripts and insert the improv where it's necessary and where it's needed, so that if something does come up and it's like amazing, but it was never actually in the original script, put it in there, see how it goes, do a couple of takes, and then boom, you're done. Yeah. That was the formula we were able to figure out over time. And I think that if somehow in some way we transitioned Sandbox Police from Zoom to live action, same thing. We have the same growing pains, trying to figure out how we can do the show, and then just adapt and work our way through it.
Exactly. And the way it's almost, and what I do is I have a script, but like I tell them, you don't have to say this line exactly the way it is. Like sometimes, like I know sometimes Evan will, like, when he's been reading like a long block of text I write, be like, oh, this is a bit too wordy, and I'm like, okay, then just throw it out and just do this as if you're like. I think one of them was like his character had to tell a story of something happening to someone, and I think the way I wrote it was like tripping him up, because I do tend to write really wordy. I said, okay, just don't worry about that. Just tell this story as if it happened to you and you're explaining it to a friend, and that seemed to work better. And so sometimes for improv, like for example, the thing with, I think it's episode 3, where we make a whole bit out of busting Ellie's balls for saying Patreon instead of Patreon. And that was an accident because she said, we can make a Patreon. And I said, like, Patreon, we just drew that out. We were like, oh, like, what are you, like, don't patronize me. Look, I'm British now. Like, it just went on and on and on. Yeah. And I took that cue from stuff like, if you listen to, like, the Howard Stern show or like Opie and Anthony or stuff like that, however you feel about those shows, that's a separate conversation. They tend to own their bombs. Like, they don't pretend they didn't happen. Like, so many most, like, the bits where I've, like, cried laughing have been, like, the ones where the host, like, messes up a line. Like, they make fun of that. They make fun of the person for messing up the line. Then they start coming up with new jokes about it, and it goes on and on and on. And so I think that really, the show it has, like, a no BS vibe, I would say, most definitely. Like,
Absolutely.
it doesn't pretend, just like the characters don't pretend to be particularly nice or good people on the air for their audience, just as they're not in real life to each other. And we're going to see that more as the conflicts tend to arise. But it tends to, the characters, like, I wanted this to be a show that was raw and real. And I think that if we just had the characters, them as hosts act perfect all the time and never own their bombs and stuff, it just wouldn't have the same level of humor. It just wouldn't seem as natural.
Yeah, and going off of that, there is a script, as Sharisse mentioned, but there are parts of the script that say, like, characters improv here, or say, like, insert a joke with this theme here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there were a few times, actually, there were quote-unquote surprise lines where they wrote their own lines for the show so that we would react to it very naturally.
Oh, yeah,
that was also a really great technique. Sharisse did a really good job with some of them, and I'll tell you, some of those lines really caught us up. So it was very
I was going to say, secret lines. It's like a unique thing. I don't know if anybody else does it. But
I don't know either.
It's the thing I'm going to explain. It's what I do when I have a line in my head that's really funny, and I want one character to say it, but I want the other character's reaction to be natural. Like, let's say I wrote a line for Ellie to say, but I didn't want Charlie to know about it. Right. Because I wanted his reaction to be natural. I would just message Stephanie in private and say, hey, at this point in the script, this is your secret line. And I'll tell her, she'll be like, oh, okay. And Evan won't know about it until we film. And then I'm sorry, I keep saying Ellie, Charlie. What I mean is Stephanie is Ellie and Evan is Charlie. So if anyone's confused. So when we're doing the lines, Stephanie will say her line as Ellie and Evan as Charlie has never heard that line before. And he will like burst out laughing or not, depending on what it is. And like, so the reaction is natural. Like, what was it? I think it was the one where right before we sing the parody of 500 Miles in episode 3, which I'm not going to spoil too much about it. But so you guys just watch it yourselves. But the kids are reminiscing about other song parodies they did at the radio station, which they often got in trouble for. And so they didn't know what I was going to sing, but I started singing it. So their reactions to it were natural. For example, there are other lines too. The story about the parrot in episode, is that 3 or 4? No, it's 3.
Episode 3. Yeah,
the story Flynn told about her mom's parrot, which is again something I think they knew. I think Stephanie knew that, but Evan, you didn't know. I think that was a secret line. Evan didn't know that story.
I don't think I did. No.
The story about the parrot, and Evan laughed as his character should have, and it wasn't a manufactured laugh. It was a laugh of someone hearing it for the first time. So that's
right.
And in episode 1, the story about Ellie's family and how Ellie ended up moving to California.
Flynn. That was my fam.
Oh, yeah, sorry about Flynn moving to California.
Now I can bust your balls about that on this show.
Yeah, you can bust my balls on this show. Give them the same Sandbox Police line. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it was my Flynn's family.
No one has ever heard that before, and it was shocking.
Flynn's family, you got to watch episode 1 because the story of Flynn's parents and why they divorced is very shocking and inappropriate. And these two had never, they never heard it before. I just came up with it.
And there were times, like while we're rehearsing and practicing, I'm just like, should we really put this in the show? And it was like really difficult for me because I was like, I don't know about this, but again, that's the point of the show. It's like, should you actually put some of these things out there for a wide audience to actually see or not?
Right, we skate just enough under it. Like I don't want like either of these guys to get fired or disqualified for like potential job opportunities. So I'm careful about that. But it's like the thing with the show, I think we've mastered the art of like gently like skating under it, so it's like just borderline unacceptable, but like still, because like the point is, like for example, episode 3 is one where we take something and we satirize not the issue itself, but the in the song parody contest there's the thing people don't know the difference of making fun of victims and making fun of perpetrators, or making fun of oppressed versus making fun of oppressors. It's something a lot of people can't tell the difference. And I'll just say I'll just say what it is. In episode 3, the kids enter a song parody contest. It's a PSA contest, but they choose to make their PSA a song parody. And the thing they choose to make a PSA about is what happened was basically there's a case of like a teacher being predatory in the town, and again the song doesn't make, and that's what they do, their song, and the school handled it abysmally, and that's what but the song makes fun of how badly the school handled it. It doesn't make fun of, teachers being it doesn't make fun of victims who have gone through that. Obviously, we would never do that. But it makes fun of how, schools often don't take these things seriously, and how predators end up being protected, and how they end up keeping their jobs instead of losing them when they commit egregious acts like this. So that's what we try to make fun of. We make fun of a system that allows corrupt and awful things to happen, but not the people to whom those things happen. That's a really important distinction to make. And unfortunately, in humor, some people they go either one way or the other with it, and they haven't yet learned the nuance of it, and it's something we could really stand to.
Yeah, and how we go about exploring these issues is that our characters spend a long time discussing them beforehand and literally pointing out, this is an awful system.
Yeah.
Before completely blowing that system apart in the jokes, making it very clear, trying to make it very clear to the audience, we don't support this system. We're trying to make fun of this system, and we're trying to make fun of the people who fully partake in this system without thinking of the consequences or without caring.
Now, Sharisse, you mentioned earlier about how your show kind of pokes fun at the whole PC culture, and everyone's so easily offended these days. And do you think that kind of hampers comedy? The fact that we are in a culture now where everyone loses their shit over the smallest thing.
Yeah, I think, well, again, it goes back to what I said before. I think what's really hampering, as I've gotten older, I've realized what I'm really against, it's not political correctness itself so much as it is failed attempts at political correctness disguised as righteousness, right? Or people, the people who claim that they're not prejudiced, but they end up, and they end up being more prejudiced in return, the more liberal and woke they try to be. Sometimes it ends up backfiring on them. I think that's what's really killing comedy. For example, the people who, it's if someone makes like I said, a joke about, let's say you do a parody of, in the episode of the show where they make this parody of 500 Miles about a teacher who got to keep his job even after being predatory to the students and to other female teachers. That's, I think most people these days, they would look at it and they would think, they would jump to the conclusion and say, oh, these people have no respect for victims of sexual violence. It's no. How do you go from here to all the way to here? And I think it's people just not, but the thing is, those people are it's more, they say fake outrage. I feel a lot of it is to make themselves feel better. Like, I think the reason why some people are so quick to jump on entertainer is because it just makes them feel better about themselves. It's like, aha, like they almost feel like they're conquering something by like calling out someone who they know is just trying to critique a system, but they just want to feel like they're part of something. Like they want to feel like they're being some kind of hero by attacking this. I feel like that is the more, and again, the reason why I'm not going to just blindly say political correctness hampers comedy is because, like, I mean, you do have to be respectful to a degree. I mean, you don't go out of your way to just make shitty jokes about, you don't go out of your way to just be racist or sexist. But like, it's when people. My issue is the people who act like they're completely free of prejudice, trying to attack the entertainers is my issue. Like, I went to college with so many, like, I had professors who, for example, they were like, we would talk about certain TV shows that featured characters of color or who were like immigrants in the show, and like they had normal interests, like Master of None, he's an Indian American Muslim kid, and like his family, they like computers, they like basketball, they like all this, and like people in college that I went, who I went to college with would be like, oh, he's just doing that to cater to a white audience. It's like, oh, no. That's a horribly prejudiced thing to say. As someone from an immigrant family, I find that a pretty offensive and prejudiced thing to say. But these are the same people who will attack, like, if they saw Sandbox Police, they would be like, oh, no, like, that's horrible, I'm triggered. Like, the same people who act like they're completely, free of prejudice and that they're just they're completely pure, and yet they're the ones who harbor all these prejudices they don't even know about. I'm willing to say on this air, I've been prejudiced before in my life. I've made unfair assumptions about people that I realize were wrong, and but I never pretend, and yet yes, I will call it out when I see it, But when I do it, it's not coming from a place of I've never done this before in my life. It's coming before a place of like I've done this before in my life and I realize it's wrong. So again, I think what's really killing comedy is people people not realizing their prejudices, I think, is what's really, like, again, political correctness itself, you need it to a degree, but the people who are going really, really far with it, I think, is they have something to hide. And my issue is that they're acting like they don't have something to hide. So that's what's killing it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with everything Sharisse just said. I don't think that could have been better spoken.
Also, people are angry. I'll just be very quick about my answer. But people are just angry and they don't know where to put their frustrations. And so comedy is in a weird place for a lot of people because there is so much prejudice and there is so much this and that. But it's like if we can't make fun of the things that make us angry, then what are we really doing here? And I think that there are a lot of good shows that are out there that are very positive and that really put themselves out there in terms of trying to send a positive message and try to subvert sort of negative stereotypes. I know that there's a new show called Ted Lasso on Apple TV Plus. That's not the kind of show that we're doing here, but certainly there is a show for everybody. And I think that for us, our goal for the show is just to not be afraid to really go where people might be uncomfortable, because that's what it is like in the past. And there are all sorts of movies and all sorts of shows that really go there. And if we're afraid to go there, then what are we doing, really? I mean, again, we can be very positive. We can put out all sorts of good messages, but I think the best thing for us, and especially for a comedy show like ours, is just to be true to what the story is and who we are as actors and people and creators.
Yeah, and I think to do humor well, you have to understand, you have to have a very specific goal in mind, and you can't just go after every current event. You can't just go after every prejudice that someone has. I think it has to be really focused as to what specifically you're critiquing about a certain prejudice or what specific aspect of an issue you're critiquing. Like Sharisse often mentions the episode, I think it's episode 3 or 4, where the characters write a song parody about the teacher who didn't get in trouble even though he was being predatory. Like, there we're critiquing a school system, but we're not going so far as to say, like, everything about this topic is wrong and, like, schools, like, these policies need to be changed. We're saying this event happened in this school district and it was handled wrong here.
Stephanie, question for you. Now, you have a bit of a unique role in the show because you are basically pulling double duty. You have two characters. You have Ellie and her twin sister, Caroline. Caroline. Damn it, I knew I was going to get that wrong.
Oh, trust me, I did not know that either. And I remember when I read that, I'm like, is it Caroline or is it?
Oh, and I've had like.
So I got tripped up too.
It is a running joke that her name is constantly mispronounced and she gets really into it.
It's like Carolyn. It's Caroline.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did that come from, and why did you want to take on like the dual roles for the show?
Well, for multiple reasons, actually. For a little background, other than like middle school acting experience, I have no acting experience whatsoever. And I'm the kind of person who, if I get a project, like, I'll throw myself all in. So I figured I'm going to go all in, and I want to play as many characters as possible who really are nothing like me. And Ellie's nothing like me because she tends to be very passive and tends to try too hard to be the neutral one out of Flynn and Charlie. And Caroline's nothing like me because she, in some ways, is extremely superficial. In many ways, is extremely superficial. And she's totally politically correct in how she buys into trends like wellness or feminism and anti-racism without actually understanding what any of them are, or any of the current events, or any actual perspectives around them, but somehow still ends up gaining a pretty popular YouTube following for her views and for what she's saying. And I thought, because this show does make fun of both sides, the overly politically correct and the people who are just saying nasty things for the sake of saying nasty things. I thought it might be interesting to have one character who exactly represents that overly politically correct Band-Aid level woke versus someone who participates in a culture who participates in this friendship that's sometimes crass for the sake of being crass, who supports Flynn's narcissism but doesn't fully feel comfortable with it herself.
Do you actually have a sibling?
I do have a sibling. I have two, actually.
Okay. I thought so, because I thought she really plays like the dueling sisters very, very well.
Thank you. I don't actually have a sister. I have my biological brother and my honorary one.
Oh, cool. Now, having done this show via Zoom, having sort of jumped into this new way of doing things, do you think it works? Do you think you would do this even if you didn't have to?
That's a difficult question. I mean, we're having fun doing it this way. Granted, connection issues are always something we don't like, and it's but honestly, I feel like now we're used to it. So I've been thinking about transitioning when it's hopefully time. I don't know how we're going to ease ourselves into it. I don't want to be too jarring for the audience. I think we were discussing once we can all get together. Now, Stephanie lives in New York. Evan and I live in Massachusetts. But once we can all get together again, we were thinking of doing maybe a reunion show, but the characters, they're all coming to visit for the holidays. Flynn from California and, Ellie from New York, Charlie from Massachusetts. And so we'd ease our people into it, our fans. I don't know why I'm saying it we have, the big following. But it's, hopefully the show will help with that. But it's, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like we'd give it a whirl, but I think certain things would work. The wonderful thing about Zoom, filming it on Zoom, it's costs nothing. I mean, we have the free Zoom. Sadly, I'm too much of a Scrooge to upgrade to the one that doesn't kick you out after 45 minutes. So what we often have to do, I'm going to say, okay, guys, I'm going to kick us out now. I'm going to start a whole new meeting. Right. So we do that. But it's it costs nothing. We don't have to worry about hiring a camera crew or something. But I'd like to certainly give it a try. I mean, I think I'd like to give it a try. I have a very love-hate relationship with the idea of legitimizing art, if you film it with this, and this, it's legitimate. Oh, if you can film it with this amount of money, it's suddenly legitimate. And I don't buy into it 100%, but it's also you got to do what you got to do to have it reach a wider audience. So I think I'd be open to trying it and seeing what it does. But I'm liking doing it on Zoom so far.
Yeah, me too. I think eventually it'd be really fun to have some episodes filmed live, maybe once or twice a year when we see each other, and have most of the show still filmed on Zoom. And Evan and Sharisse and I, every year around Christmas or Thanksgiving we do a small road trip to nearby town. So what we've actually discussed is, why don't we just turn one of these road trips into a plot? For example, getting, not to provide any spoilers, but we were thinking maybe in one episode, it's a reunion episode, they're going somewhere, maybe they're going off to film the show, or maybe they're going back after their show, or maybe it's they're filming some behind-the-scenes bloopers, and they get pulled over on the side of the road.
I've been pulled over 3 times in the past year, so I probably will. I promise that's not too far off. But if we can get together this year, I hope we can. I mean...
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
We'll see. The pandemic pending, but I think once we stay outdoors and just wear masks and do all that other stuff, I think we'll be okay. But it is still a very delicate situation, even though we have we've gone below 1% here, but it's still a tricky thing. So we'll see what happens.
Travel's hard.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I felt the need to say this. I don't know why I didn't mention before. We didn't really want this to be a COVID show. It's why we didn't set it in 2020.
Yeah, we forgot to.
I just thought, I don't know. I feel first of all, people are latching on to that already and saying, even major networks are doing that. There's a show coming out. I don't know what it's called, but I saw a commercial for it on, I think it was CBS or ABC, but they kind of did that. And I know Nickelodeon's doing a kid's show like that. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I just feel it wouldn't be, I don't know, I feel I just worried about COVID infiltrating every single plot line, and it would just kind of take away from everything, so I just didn't. I don't know. And the thing is, it's set in 2019, and if it keeps going, it's eventually going to be set in COVID times. I don't know how we're going to address that. I don't even know, frankly, if I see this going beyond 10 episodes, but we'll see what the reception it gets. But
yeah, like what I personally really love, like I absolutely love about the show is that it doesn't take place in COVID times. It doesn't address COVID times. I really appreciate the break that it gives me and it gives viewers, it gives Evan and Sharisse from constantly seeing news about the pandemic. And it serves as a reminder, like, hey, there are more issues out there than the pandemic.
And I also think it's good that you kind of separate it from that, because anything tied with COVID, with the pandemic, eventually that does become dated. Okay, yet another pandemic show, because I've seen some of the commercials that you mentioned for like this COVID show, that COVID show. I'm sick of it. I watch TV to escape from reality, not to be reminded of it. So it's nice to not yet have one more thing saying, hey, remember this thing? Because I want to forget it. A lot.
Yeah, and one thing that would have been a problem if we had said it in 2020, if we had said it during a pandemic, is that I feel like the pandemic itself, just the mention of it, would draw all focus onto the fact that this is a show taking place digitally, taking place virtually during a pandemic, rather than this is a group of friends on their radio show trying to maintain their audience, making fun of various current issues, and trying to decide where their show is going to go and deal with their own conflicts.
Not only that, but like people are like, everybody knows the pandemic is going on, and even a whole bunch of people who probably shouldn't be tuning themselves out of the pandemic have already moved on. And so it's like there is a mindset, and there are eyes that are trying to find other things to think about and to be, critical about or to take in as entertainment consumers. And I think that what we are doing, especially with these hopefully total of 10 episodes, is just to give people something to think about and just something to hopefully they'll be able to enjoy.
Evan, I want to ask about your character, Charlie. Where does he fit into all this? What kind of role does he serve in the show?
Yeah, so basically he and Ellie and Flynn were all working together at their college radio station, and so he really was a part of the sort of original ride that started before the show began, and that we just established each of their characters' individual lives. At the exact same time, Charlie is going through some changes because he is starting to reevaluate his role on the show as well. So actually, it's kind of funny that you asked that, because he's going through a lot of character growth and trying to figure out, okay, so he can joke and stuff, but is he actually leading bits? Is he, giving suggestions? What exactly is he doing? And then he finds himself at a bit of a crossroads, figuring out, what actually does he want to talk about? What actually does he want to do? Does he want to do something different on the show? Maybe he wants to do his own thing. And so, he's sort of trying to figure that out, but he isn't really doing it in such a way that's productive for him. He's just I think he's kind of confused. He's sure of himself in some ways, but he's also trying to figure a lot of other things out. And he'll later on there will be a climax to his story arc. I won't give too much away, but there is a lot to be explored for Charlie, for sure.
And another thing about Charlie is, not spoil too much, as Evan said, he's a huge hypocrite. Because he later ends up critiquing the culture. Not even critiquing. Critiquing implies, being constructive. And he's just the parts where he flat out criticizes the culture of the show. Or he's a dish it out but can't take it kind of person. Right. Where, he will bust the girl's balls all day long, but when it comes to him, he'll, freak out. Or yet he claims later on to dislike the culture of the show, and yet he participates in it 100%. Exactly. He enjoys the benefits it gives him. So that's another thing about Charlie's culture, and the reason why I had him in episode 4, I had him go on a different podcast. as a guest. My friend Neva Joseph, she played a character called Sarah McDonald, who was a filmmaker and a film reviewer, and she has a fictional podcast in my show. I had him go on that, and they had a great time together, as you see Charlie and Sarah. And you see Charlie at the end. Sarah says, "I'm having a good time. Are you?" And Charlie's like, "Yeah, I am." Like, he realizes, like, and it is humorous, but it's also like he's kind of realizing himself that it's like, you know what? Maybe this is where I'm meant to be. Like, he's getting that inkling. He's not made up his mind, but he's kind of thinking about that.
So for the folks currently watching the Sandbox Police, what can they look forward to in some future episodes without giving away a whole lot of spoilers?
This is hard.
As I said, a big fight. It's a couple episodes away. Definitely more tension. I mean, the episode we're filming right now is, some people may say, well, what's the point of it? I think the episodes 5 and 6, 6 is more the catalyst for what's going to happen in 7. That's the big blowout. 5 is more, I don't want to say filler. Nothing I write is filler. I don't feel that way. But it's more of like another stepping stone to get to where we need to be for those really important emotional moments to happen. You can definitely expect to see Charlie and Ellie objecting more to some of the stuff Flynn does. Most definitely.
Oh, I'd say episode 5, like, it's really there to, like, even though not much happens plot-wise, it's really there to just highlight the tension that's growing. Like, we see the characters just making the same jokes as before, but the delivery's different. The tone's entirely different. Like, the culture of the show starts breaking apart. It's really there to illustrate how awkward their relationship has become and how it's affecting their friendships, how it's affecting where their show might go. And I think for future episodes, Sharisse mentioned the fight. Sharisse mentioned a huge climax. She mentioned a lot more tension, a lot more drama. I'd say something unexpected to look forward to, which you're now going to expect, guest appearances. But we won't say what the context is.
Yeah, right.
And then at the end, you can expect the kids to do something good that would be out of character for them during the finale. It's going to happen. So I don't want to give away. It's hard to not to give away a lot. But
I know, right? Exactly. Well, Sharisse, Stephanie, Evan, thank you all so much. This has been a lot of fun. And for the folks at home, definitely check out the Sandbox Police. Find them on YouTube. Watch it all. Watch like the bonus episodes, little like side episodes too. It's a great time. Thanks again, and I definitely look forward to what comes next.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is your girl, Lady V, host of the V Line, and you're listening to Citywide Blackout.
All right, folks, that brings this episode to a close. You can follow the show on Facebook under Citywide Blackout and Twitter and Instagram under Citywide Max. Listen to the show on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Amazon Music, and every Saturday at 10 p.m. on Boston Free Radio. As always, keep those ears open. Hey everyone, Max Bowen here. If you're a longtime listener of the show, you know how much I love Comixology. This is the best place to go for digital comics from every company out there, from the big two to independent creator-owned titles. Well, folks, the big news is that they are hitting the presses. In the spring of 2021, they'll be teaming up with Dark Horse Comics, publisher of titles such as Black Hammer, Hellboy, and Sin City, my personal favorite, to distribute print editions of Comixology originals, graphic novels, and collections. This is going to include the Eisner Award winner Afterlift, along with Breaklands, Youth, and The Black Ghost. I have read most of these titles. They are amazing. I cannot wait to add them to my bookshelf. Now, these will be available in comic shops, bookstores, and libraries, and more will be announced in the weeks and months to come. But if you want all the updates, go to ComixologyOriginals.com and follow them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.